A question along the lines of, "That's interesting, why did you do that?" is a great way to set up the beginning of what could be a very layered set of following on questions that really get to the heart of how a person is making decisions. If done properly, it leaves no corners to hide, and it really exposes and lays bare any faults in the way that somebody goes about tackling problems. And as we all know, if somebody is interviewing, they're really looking for someone who's going to be able to solve problems on a daily basis in different scenarios. A typical way that this line of questioning will begin is simply with the interviewer looking through perhaps the candidate's resume and picking out what look to be key decision points, or even asking the candidate straight up, tell me about any important decisions that you've made in your life, and then moving on from there. And the first step is going to be asking about the circumstances surrounding the decision. A decision on its own in a vacuum doesn't really give much insight into what was going on at the time. So the richer the details that can be filled in around what was happening at the time, what the circumstances it were that led up to this decision point, maybe what the possible options or pressures or stresses that were in evidence at that moment. This all gives the context that's going to make that decision really stand out. Then we'll follow a stage where the interviewer is going to invite the candidate to walk them through the series of steps and progression that formed the logic and the pattern to what that decision ultimately came to be. And this is where hiding spaces start to disappear. It's just not going to be acceptable to say something along the lines of, "Oh, seemed like a good idea at the time." No, really going to be pressing for what were the other options that you considered? Why did you consider them? What made you think that this was going to be the best option to go forward with? And just having a really clear understanding of how that process worked or didn't at the time. And then having assessed how much emotion, logic, prioritization played itself out in the formulation of that decision, the action that was taken, the interviewer is then typically going to ask the candidate to sit back and in hindsight reflect upon what the consequences were, negative, positive, on that decision, what could have been likely outcomes for alternative courses of action taken at the time, and be able to really give an understanding in the present as to how that decision impacted their life up until this point. As a candidate, what this will mean for your interview prep is sitting down with your resume beforehand, going through things like major career decisions, choices of school, any other thing that can be visible as a major life decision, and just run through some of these steps so you have it in your mind really clearly at the time, where your head was at, and just how you handled each of these decisions, so that when and if that answer is required of you, you're not digging out of thin air to come up with an explanation. You've already rehearsed it. You know where you're at with that one, and can answer confidently. As an interviewer, red flags that you're going to be looking out for are things like decisions that just don't seem to make any sense, either at the time or in hindsight, that really make you question, how well this candidate is going to perform under pressure when they're having to come up with decisions on a regular basis. The second red flag to look out for is a candidate that looks back and comes up with well, it just seemed like a good idea at the time. I changed jobs because I fancy to change. Either the way that they're thinking through their actions is not at all remotely sophisticated, or they're covering something, right? There was a reason, there's a deeper reason, it's probably got some real negative connotations to it, and they're just trying to gloss over that with some simple answer. And the point of this question is not letting them do that. So dig deeper until you get to the bottom of it. Now, one exception in this scenario, which can actually be a really good answer, is if a candidate has really done something completely stupid in the past, absolutely regret it, it's been a terrible decision, rather than try to hide or gloss over it, own up to it. If the interviewer is asking, oh, why did you do this particular thing? Just say, hey, straight up, at that time in my life, stroke career, I wasn't really focused. I wasn't thinking very well about things. And I made a really dumb decision because in the short term, it was exciting for me, or I thought it was a good idea. Friend recommended it to me and what have you. And that just shows where I was at that age. I learned a lot from that, actually, because it was a terrible decision. It cost me dearly in this, that, and the other. I've learned all these great lessons as a result of that. And hey, you know what? I'm not going to make those kind of mistakes again. So again, that's a really honest answer. It does admit to the errors that were made, and really shows that you're a much stronger person as a result of it. And again, nobody is expecting candidates to be completely perfect. It's just not going to be the case. We know we've all made mistakes over the course of our lives and our careers, and you can safely own up to them if you've learned from it, if you've put it right, and you're not at risk of having those same mistakes happen in the future.